All right, welcome in, everyone. It is Tuesday. It is time for Full Court Press. It's $5 Tuesday at WagerTalk, which means myself, Rob Vino, and all the other handicappers on the site will have a play up, at least one, for just $5. Recap of my night last night, quick, Rob. I ended up in the ER. So I ended up at the hospital. I tweeted my picture of me watching Santa Clara St. Mary's from the hospital room, where we cashed that. So I'm fine. I appreciate you guys that reached out. I mean, I guess we'll see if I'm fine, but I'm here, so that's a good news. All the tests and stuff they ran came back fine. And Rob, I was 2-0 last night, so I kind of want to go back to that room. I don't think they're going to let me. I don't, can't be billing insurance just to watch basketball in a lucky place. But if I recall correctly, Rob, did you not have an undefeated night when you had to go to the ER earlier this year? We might be undefeated in the emergency room this year.
I'd have to check back on that.
I think you went 3-0 the night you had your knee drained. If I remember correctly.
You're right. Absolutely. Because I remember being late with the plays after getting the injection, being late with the plays and going 3-0. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I didn't think of it that way, but man, not to wish us being, sick or hindered in any way, shape, or form, but it's good results.
Yeah. Well, listen, that's if the double the CBB firepower package doesn't promo itself, I mean, combined 5-0 at the ER for us. So I went 2-0 last night. We got the parlay home, which we desperately needed. So we're going to try to get another one today. How was your night? Bring us home with how your night was last night.
Yesterday in college basketball was 1-2, another small give back. The winner, the good, was Eastern Washington team total over, as we talked about. The bad was Georgia Southern full game total over. I think we hit on that as good as you could hit on that game, Adam, and then go out for myself and lose a play. But we did hint at the kind of dissension in Georgia Southern's shooting numbers the game before after winning 5 straight. Those numbers did come down again last night. But I think the biggest thing was, and I somewhat was scared off by the number in this game, but should have, in retrospect, played Troy. Talked about how Troy played Georgia Southern once, and they were one of the only teams, if not the only team in the Sun Belt, that played Georgia Southern style in the regular season meeting and did everything Georgia Southern does well, even better. And last night, they didn't even play Georgia Southern style. Last night was dominant on the boards by Troy. It was, I think they made over 70% of their twos. So it was interior stuff at the rim, on the boards. I think fatigue shows up in that way a little bit. Georgia Southern otherwise was not horrible, but Troy was just a physically and closer to the basket dominant team in that one. So congratulations to Troy. They had to play 2 games to get home as a tourney winner and into the NCAA March Madness tournament. And again, congratulations to Georgia Southern. I mean, doing what they did is not easy. Lastly, I'll close really quick here. The other loss, the 1-2, was, again, sometimes in retrospect, but Northern Colorado minus points. I'm glad you had Montana. And again, it's a case where I was on here 2 weeks ago praising Money Williams, praising Montana's championship pedigree. Don't sell them short. And boy, they took that blowout loss just recently to Northern Colorado to heart. And Money Williams, 18 of 19 from the free throw line. And he was everything. And Northern Colorado, exhibited what they exhibited all season long. Excellent offense, very little to no defense.
Yeah, big effort last night for Money Williams, 40 points. All right, we'll get into it today. I was trying to get the nurse interested in Santa Clara last night. She was not, just for an update there. No one there seemed to care that I was very invested in that Santa Clara game. It was so busy and stuff. I pretty much watched that game in the room like unbothered because that's how long I was there. So 11:30 p.m. tip, no problem. Caught that whole game in my little hospital cot, whatever bed thing I was in. But hey, Rob, Santa Clara, huge spot for them. They kind of needed that game to punch their ticket officially. I mean, I still feel like they should have been in regardless, but I don't think we have to second guess that anymore. That win should put them comfortably in the NCAA tournament field. And so that brings us to tonight's game. I'm going to let you kick us off, Santa Clara Gonzaga. But my first question to you, and you can obviously intertwine this into your handicap, is are you worried that there's a little bit of an exhale here from Santa Clara because last night was the one that they needed, the one they really had to have to get to the NCAA tournament?
I am. I would be. I mean, that was a gritty effort by Santa Clara. For those who didn't see that game last night, Santa Clara had difficulties on the offensive end for quite a while in that game. And it came to a point where I remember watching last night, Adam, and seeing Tom Crean, ex-head coach of Marquette, Indiana, from the studio asking Sean Farmer, is there any way that Santa Clara could run some double staggers? And they're talking about off the ball movement, because Santa Clara was falling into the hands of the St. Mary's defense. And then the second half that changed. Santa Clara made the necessary adjustments. They did what they do best. They made some threes. They got the scoring up. I think they had 44 in the second half, maybe 42, but it was a huge upgrade from their first half. And to their credit, Santa Clara was still in the game, even though they were having offensive difficulties. You never felt like they're, out of it. They're down 4, they're down 3, they're down 2, whatever they were down. It wasn't much. And when they hit the accelerator, St. Mary's was the team that couldn't keep up. To your original question, I do feel like that was a monster game for them. Their NCAA tournament bid hung on that result. They got the result they needed. Now you go play Gonzaga. And what furthers the problem here for me, for Santa Clara, is Gonzaga did not have a great night last night against Oregon State. And I fully would expect an offensive bounce back out of Gonzaga. Some of their numbers posted, and I get Oregon State can be difficult to play. Their kind of style of slow and, filthy kind of basketball. But for Gonzaga, 3 of 14 from 3, not much in the way of a rebounding edge, which is not like them. Very little to no advantage as far as free throw attempts are concerned. That stuff probably all changes here. It's a different style game with Santa Clara. This will be much more up and down. Both teams actually, probably look at each other and say, well, this is more suited to what we want to do. But Gonzaga won both regular season meetings. They win 94-86. They win 89-77. They show you that they can score on Santa Clara, 94 and 89 in those two games. Santa Clara also responded with, like I say, 86 and 77. So for me, beyond looking at Gonzaga from a side perspective, would probably want to look at the total in some way, shape, or form. For me, that form would probably be the Gonzaga team total. Again, because it's not that I want to exclude Santa Clara from scoring points here. It's that I'm a little nervous about maybe a little celebratory hangover from Santa Clara in this game. It may not happen. Herb Sendek may get the crew together. And, they haven't won this tournament in ages. Have they ever won this tournament, Santa Clara? And so obviously that's a goal that they would want to achieve here. For me, I still think Gonzaga's due for a huge bounce back in this game. I think probably Santa Clara had a lot of energy taken out of them last night, needing that win the way they did and against a physical St. Mary's. So I'd probably look Gonzaga -6.5 first, and then I would look to, or maybe equal parts. I shouldn't say that because I'm more of a totals guy, but maybe the Gonzaga team total over 82.5 ends up being what I wind up featuring here today.
Rob, that I was going to pretty much ask you that because to me, like looking at the first two meetings and the ease in which Gonzaga scored points in those two meetings, it's hard to believe that they're not at like that they would put up less than like 85 here. Gonzaga always takes this game seriously. You can talk about like, well, Gonzaga, they don't need to win the final. I can't remember. I mean, they've definitely been beaten this game before. I think St. Mary's has won it in recent years, at least, once or twice. But like Gonzaga always shows up to play in this game. You go back through the years, and there's been teams that have gotten to this game, and then they run into a Gonzaga team that doesn't need to win it, but they go out and win by 15 anyway. I'm not worried about Santa Clara not taking the game seriously. What I'm worried about is the like you said, the energy and the effort exerted to hold on to that game down the stretch. Couple huge turnovers, big defensive plays that Santa Clara made. Rob, they only turned the ball over 4 times yesterday.
Yeah.
They played. I mean, really, they played in my opinion, they played as good as Santa Clara can play. In that game, 4 turnovers. They made the defensive plays. We talked about the rebounding disparity in the most recent meeting, the one that occurred in Moraga, where St. Mary's had out rebounded them by 30. Last night, 37-28. It's just a huge effort from Santa Clara. So it's less, I guess for me, it's less there is an element of the exhale because they have now been told by everyone involved with college basketball media that they're in, and they are in. They're not going to be left out after losing to St. Mary's. But I think the combination of that and then the game that they would have to play to stay within, I think it's still 6.5. Gonzaga may have taken some money, but the game that they would have to play to stay within 6.5 against this Gonzaga team, I just think that's a lot to ask in a 3-day span. So it would have to be Gonzaga minus the points. That's the way I lean. That would be my play in this game, but I totally see where you're coming from with the team total.
Yeah, and quickly, to Santa Clara's credit, not only did they only commit a minuscule 4 turnovers, they were 5 of 14 from the free throw line. They couldn't make a free throw last night, and they still won the game without free throws. So credit to them. It's 2 different style opponents, obviously. And I think, honestly, if you're Santa Clara, the style that's harder to face is the St. Mary's style. It's just more of a grind. It's more taxing, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see how this one goes, but I like your point about Gonzaga they never, ever need to win this game to punch their ticket, but yet they always come to show. They always show up, and generally speaking, they win this game. They take pride in winning the WCC conference title.
Yeah, one final point I'll make is Christian Hammond did not play particularly well last night. He just couldn't get his shot going. It just goes back to how impressive that performance was in the gray areas, right? With the rebounding and the defensive stops and the hustle plays, because, they did all of that with Hammond not really providing much offensively. 7 points and missed some makeable shots. So yeah, very interesting sort of scenario there. But for me, I think there's a pretty clear edge to Gonzaga there. It hasn't made my client card yet, but it's certainly on my list of things to consider. And I told you yesterday, Rob, and this is like just more of a general point that I'm going to probably continue to make early in the week. Like, some of these line moves have been crazy. Even last night, there was just within that last hour to 2 hours, some crazy movement on certain games. And, if Santa Clara got hit here and pushed this back to like 6.5, 6, I may have to jump in with Gonzaga. But I think I even with how crazy the line stuff has been, I think Gonzaga probably ends up in the 7.5 to 8 range before we're all said and done here. So again, just something to look at. My buy point there would be 6.5 or better. All right, let's go to Garth. Garth says run goes to 15-6 after ETSU didn't come through last night. Furman came through, which is kind of what Rob, you alluded to liking Furman. I said I didn't want to bet East Tennessee State, and the reason why sort of played out. So that I think would have been a good result for anyone that sort of took that advice yesterday from that game. Today, Garth wants to go to the Big 12. So we are opening up the Big 12 tournament, some opening round games today. He's got another total, so I'll let you start this one off. Cincinnati, Utah, over 64.5. Garth says combined 13-5 to this number since February 1st. I think this is the glass court, Rob, out in Big 12 country, that they can change the design on the court. Haven't really seen it yet. Didn't catch any of the girls' tournament. But we want to know if the ball's going through the hoop or not in the first half here. So talk to me about Cincy, Utah, specifically the total.
Yeah, to make a counter argument to that is a little bit difficult because you can point to a lot of components that might say over 64.5. I will say this to Garth is that, my experience this year, as great as this season has been in college basketball, my experience has been every time I dive into something first half, I get snake bit, including East Tennessee State the other day. First half should have never been in on the first half. Should have been in on the second half. That aside, my personal first half failures aside, which I haven't gotten involved in a lot of first halves, you could see Cincinnati. I'd almost rather isolate it to Cincinnati's team total, which, as I'm looking here, is only 35.5. The Utah defense is a sieve. It's been a sieve all season long. Cincinnati obviously has the capability. It's been a little sporadic, but they've got the capability to score big points on that team. They've got scorers. Just doesn't always come through every game. They're a little inconsistent where scoring is concerned. But to ask for 36, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, Garth, but I would be interested to see how many times Utah has given up more than 35.5 in the first half. They've sort of, where Utah's concerned, they have sort of changed their stripes throughout the season. I'm going to say first 2/3 of the season, maybe a little bit less. It seemed to me Utah they are very guard reliant for points, but they were more apt to play quickly. And then down the stretch, they kind of slowed things down a little bit. I think part of that would be, realizing that we can't get into these high scoring games with teams. They were giving up points in droves in some Big 12 games. I don't know. There's been occasion where you say you can trust Utah as an offense, but do you trust them against this Cincinnati defense? I don't know. I kind of would not trust them in this particular situation with Cincinnati looking to build a little more of a resume. Not that Utah's a resume builder. The other concern you would have is, again, the arena, T-Mobile Center, first game out, maybe tricky rims. Who knows how teams are going to react in their first game. Gonzaga had a miserable shooting game last night in their first night out in the WCC tournament. Sometimes you come out red hot. That stuff's 20/20 hindsight, but it always has to factor into your handicap. In short, if I was going to play this, Garth, I think I would lean more on Cincinnati, less on Utah, probably play the Cincinnati team total over 35.5. And again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it would seem to me that Utah is more than capable of giving up 36 in the first half.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you going the team total route if you like Cincinnati, because this one has moved quite a bit. Looks like it's up to 12.5. You could get 11.5 still most places. There are some of the more public shops are up in the 12.5 range. I just want no part of Utah. Like this is a team that I just want absolutely no part of in this tournament. They've just looked like they're totally cooked. I just don't see, like, some of these teams, the smaller conferences, Rob, kind of stop bringing these teams to their tournament, right? The very, very bottom of the league. I'm surprised the bigger leagues haven't all done that, right? Like the ACC is doing that, where they're just not going to bring the 3 worst teams in the league. There's just how much of this Utah team is already trying to figure out where they're going to go play next year at this point, right? I think that's what you got to sort of look at, and we'll talk about. I'll just segue it, and I'm going to give out a play, and hopefully we can go 3-teamer today, because I'm going to give out a play that's early, and it's going to be my parlay leg. So we'll make sure it's a 3-teamer today, because I really like Baylor, and I'm just going to use I guess this Utah-Cincinnati game to segue to the Baylor-Arizona State game, because I think you have, again, very similar. You have Arizona State, who just lost, their coach is done. They're going to move in a different direction from Hurley. And you're really trying to gauge, in my opinion, in these two early Big 12 games, like which of these team cares, who's going to show up, who really wants to be there and think they can make a run. And I think in those two games, it's Baylor and it's Utah. It's Baylor and it's Cincinnati. I don't really want to lay 11 with Cincinnati to, like, maybe Utah hangs around and comes in and clips them and, only loses by 9 and covers the number. But I'm more than content laying the 3.5 or the 4 with Baylor against Arizona State. Rob, I think Baylor kind of needs this game. I was talking to CT about 10 minutes before the show. He went to Baylor. This is his team. He gives me unbiased takes on Baylor, and he made a great point that ultimately pushed me over the edge here, in the respect that, like, this feels like a big game for Scott Drew. I don't think Scott Drew is losing his job by any means. He won a national championship game there 5 years ago, but I don't know. I kind of agreed with that take, where it's like, you've got this Arizona State team that kind of feels checked out. If you're Baylor, you got to win this game. You have to go in and win this game. You can't lose this game if you're Scott Drew and you're Baylor. And I still think Baylor is the better of these two teams and has some edges on the matchup. So this is a client play for me. This will be my parlay leg. I laid 3.5 with some juice with Baylor in this game. I think -115 or -118, whatever was at the whatever we were allowed to post for a consensus line when I locked this in. I'm looking at the board, Rob. You can still get 3.5 -120 pretty much anywhere. And if you want to just lay the 4 and don't want to pay for the juice, I understand that as well. I think this could be a pretty dominant performance by Baylor here. And I love this spot. And I just think Arizona State's a team that's just coming in, and they're going to be heading out early in this tournament. So I laid the points with Baylor. Talk to me about that game, though. Agree and feel free to disagree if you've got something different.
Well, yeah, I think, there's two schools of thought, right? I don't know what the players think of Bobby Hurley as a head coach. The announcement that comes at this time of season that they're going to part ways can go either very well or very poorly. And that kind of depends on the player's affection for their head coach. If it's a play one for Bobby, I mean, the opening game that Oregon State played against San Francisco the other day as a 3.5-point dog was, they played hard for their head coach, Wayne Tinkle, who's on his way out. Obviously, they're overmatched yesterday by Gonzaga, but they didn't play a poor game by any stretch. They cover the number. They hold Gonzaga to 65 points. So Oregon State's an example of how good it can go. 2-0 ATS in their tournament. Good result for handicappers who back them. It could go the other way, though. And I don't know how much these kids. It seems to me like Bobby Hurley's message wore out long ago with Arizona State. They probably could have made this move, honestly, Adam, a couple of years back if they really wanted to dismiss him and to get somebody new in there. Mo Odom, their best player, is a senior on his way out anyway. Does he have one last big game in him or not? He didn't have a big game against Baylor the first time around. Baylor kind of contained Mo Odom in what was a close game in Waco. For me, it's hard to decide which way it goes. If I had to guess, and again, we're not in these locker rooms, but we cover this stuff close enough and long enough to maybe make a pretty good assessment of where ASU stands with their head coach. I would not think that Bobby Hurley is one of those let's win one for the Gipper type of guys where his team is concerned. And they'll go out and they'll play hard. But if things start to go bad, you just wonder, do they have it in them to try and correct it? You know what I mean? If Baylor gets out to, let's just say Baylor gets out to a 14-4 jump on things, Arizona State really got it in them? Or do they just say, you know what, coach is gone, we're all gone next year, Mo Odom's off to NBA draft camps to see if he gets, et cetera, et cetera. That to me would be the more plausible scenario. So from that perspective, you would like Baylor, who I do think, the end of the season, they had a couple of instances where they look pretty good. Baylor's not that less of a talented team from an overall Big 12 perspective. They've got talent on that side that could probably open up a margin here. So I'm not involved in the game. Obviously, we're rooting for Baylor here because you're on that side. And boy, money has moved that game, right? 2.5 to 4.5 right away. And I don't know if that's an initial pull of the trigger because Hurley was dismissed.
Yeah.
People just saying, oh, coach is gone, bet the other side. But like I say, that can go either way. I just don't think Bobby Hurley's the kind of guy that the players rise up and play one for today.
Yeah, so just to speak about on the line move a little bit, I think that 2.5 was gone very, very quick. Like for me, 3.5 is very playable here. I wouldn't want 4.5 like that. I think that's the point where you gotta maybe step out. Like I wouldn't want to take 4.5. Like I'm already laying a slightly, not the optimal number at 3.5 minus 118, but just to reference the line move, like. That 2.5 was basically the opener, like the overnight opener, not even the overnight opener, like the early yesterday afternoon opener, Rob, that was of very, very small limits and gone quickly. So I don't even like I don't, if you're betting these games for anything substantial, you probably weren't getting 2.5. So I'm okay with saying 3.5 is like a very fair number here. Like that would be sort of like the widely available like number. And yeah, but it has moved past that. Some places, I still think if you're looking at the screen, there is still like 3.5 minus 120 is still attainable out there. And just to go back to the point you made with Baylor, the last sort of couple weeks of the season, if you go back to the Arizona State game, which they kind of played a, not the best first half. That game was at Foster Pavilion in Waco. I remember, liking them in that game at the time. Didn't want to lay what at that time there was some pretty big move to Baylor as well. I think they moved from 5.5 all the way up to 7.5 at home. Didn't play the best first half, but came out, took care of business, ended up winning by 5. They actually probably should have won by more. They missed like a whole bunch of free throws to close that game out. They really have not played a bad half of basketball since. Right? Like they come out the next game, give Arizona a great game, lose by 7. The following game, they beat UCF. The game after that, they went on the road to Houston where they were tied for most, at halftime and then into the second half. And then, of course, the season finale, they dropped 101 on Utah. And what you saw against Utah last weekend, Rob, in my opinion, is what the Baylor offense is capable of. Especially if you're sort of your gut saying, and I think Bayou said something to this similar in the chat. If Arizona State shows up, they're not really defending. Like Baylor still has my criticism with Baylor this year was always on the defensive end. It really was never the offense. Like this team still has guys that can put the ball in the basket. And we just saw it over the weekend, dropping 101 on Arizona State. The final thing I'll say about this one is I think Baylor comes into this tournament thinking, we can win a game or two. Because again, look at those last 2 months of the season. They went up against a couple of the best teams in this league, Arizona and Houston, and they were in those games. I believe they were in a game with Iowa State earlier this year as well. So those are the top teams in the Big 12 that Baylor has played competitive with for like most of a game. 4% play for me, Baylor minus 3.5, and that will be my leg of the parlay. So parlays for the live viewers today, Rob, and it means we're going to probably have to find a joint leg because, I know that we got people that roll in and watch this show late. And if you get in and you watched at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, that Baylor game is one of the first ones off the board. So it will be a 3-teamer today. We'll figure out a third leg at some point. But for now, I'm going to go to Richie. Richie Action 247 said Trig inspired Tour Game 1 will be at the Horizon Final at Fairgrounds Coliseum in Indy. That's awesome. I hope you enjoy the game. Sadly, I'm not going to be able to make the Siena game tonight. I'll be watching that one from my house. because I had to come back up here to go to the doctor. So I won't be in AC tonight, but I do think, as long as I'm cleared to go, I will likely go to the Lehigh game tomorrow. But Richie's got boots on the ground tonight, Rob. Horizon final. How about Detroit Mercy and all those Detroit kids from the Detroit area coming out yesterday, upsetting Robert Morris to get to the final? Tonight, they run into Wright State. Wright State dropped 100 last night. Looks like Richie thinks Wright State could score some points again here. Agree or disagree? Horizon League final. Anything for you on the side or total in this one?
Yeah, not going to disagree at all. I just don't know that anybody in this league, and again, last night was probably the straw that just, breaks the camel's back, so to speak. Right? Because I don't see anybody in this league that can stop the Wright State offense. It's that good. And Detroit is not that capable offensively to keep pace. Now, as I say that, somebody would counter and say, you know what, Rob, first time around, Detroit Mercy plays them to 2 points, 84-82. Second time around, they play them to 77-74, 2 and 3 point contests. So certainly they played them tight in those games. And certainly they have the mindset to play them tight. So when I see stuff like that, obviously I don't, with the opinion that I have of Wright State, let's label it that way, with the opinion that I have going in of Wright State and the thought process of nobody can stop them offensively, when I see those 2 season results, it stops me from laying points here. I was inclined to lay points with Wright State, and maybe I still will, but it puts me squarely where Richie's saying he is. If you don't think, or you don't absolutely trust that the team could cover because they haven't proven through 2 games this year that they can cover, then go right to the team total, which Wright State is more than capable of exceeding 78.5 here. Last night, and Northern Kentucky plays a little bit differently than Detroit does. But again, Robert Morris was horrendous last night from 3-point range. You're just not going to get that out of Wright State. And you're going to get all the other extra intangibles out of Wright State on the offensive end that you didn't get out of Robert Morris last night. You're going to get better rebounding. You're going to get a lot of trips to the free throw line, all that stuff. When it all accumulates, it adds up to more than 78.5. I was kind of surprised, to tell you the honest truth, that this wasn't somewhere in the either at the 80.5 range team total or into the low 80s, like 81.5, 82.5, somewhere in there. 78.5 to me with Wright State seems almost like a bargain at this point in time. You go back through their regular season and see how many times they've exceeded this number. I get it's a championship game, and a lot of the old adage handicapping stuff tells you that championship games, defensive minded, but there's nothing about Wright State as far as what they're predicated on that screams defense. It's all offense. So for me, I would thoroughly agree with what Richie's saying there. 78.5 looks like a good number. I think he's on the right side there. Team total over.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Detroit has been much better defensively down the stretch and in this tournament so far. But I guess my concern for the Detroit side in this game, Rob, is like Wright State is just going to create better looks, and they're going to create them more frequently. Their offense is it's so much more efficient, averaging 80.5 points per game this year. They hit from the field at a top 30 clip nationally, where I just don't know that Detroit can sort of scrap their way to a win like they did against Robert Morris. And then before part of the Robert Morris breakdown yesterday, which I certainly leaned the Robert Morris side in that game. I've been high on this Detroit team coming into the year, but I did not expect them to win that game last night. And part of the reason I didn't think they would win that game is because of, the sort of lack of efficiency on offense for Detroit. It's tough shots. It's, a lot of their games during Horizon League regular season play were just like very like scrappy, almost like slugfest type games. And then, toward the end of the season, the run that they finished the regular season on, 5 of the last 6, they really started to put the ball in the basket a little bit. But against teams that have real issues defensively. Milwaukee, they had placed twice in that stretch. And we talked about Milwaukee, showing up to the conference tournament with injuries and guys out. And then Oakland, their defense let them down massive this year. I think, that was a big reason Oakland is not still in the mix here and didn't end up winning a league that I think a lot of people thought they were going to win. So here you have to deal with Wright State in a game where you almost think that Detroit is going to have to score like 75 to 80 to have a chance to win. I think that the more likely outcome, Rob, is Wright State just pulling away because the volume of their shots is going to be so much, the quality of their shots and then the volume is going to be higher and better than Detroit. And I just don't think they can scrap their way in a game like this against a team as efficient as Wright State. So it's a Wright State lean for me. I didn't lay that number, but I think this is a league where we're going to get the best team. The 1 seed is going to advance because I know some of these 1 seeds have, kind of gotten bounced from their conference tournament so far this conference tournament season. I don't think this is going to be one of them. I like Wright State in this one. And so I guess I would agree with your team total over. More importantly, Richie, have a great time at the game. That should be a good one right there. Okay. Let's go back to the chat. Appreciate the donations as always. I think we have, yes, we do. We have Mad Max in the building. And of course, the super chat stars are messing me up again. Okay, here's well, first of all, appreciate the donation as always. He says, quick note about odds logic. I've recently noticed that when at least 50% of the tickets amount of money is 70 to 80% a favored team, but the line doesn't move, the unfavored team usually covers. Listen, I mean, that's, you can, I guess it's a good promotion for odds logic right here, which Rob and I speak very highly of on the show. What I will say and about, just your point that you're making is odds logic does make it very easy to sort of like see that and to track that. So if that's something that you are like really like using in your handicap, I think odds logic is as good as any odd screen that I've used. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's a good promo for odds logic. I know most of the Wager Talk folks use that, sort of swear by it, and I'll say I've been very, very happy since I switched to it, and now that I've gotten to know the sort of functionality a little bit better, I've got my screen set up the way I want them set up. It's a great product, and I don't. Do you want to just kind of speak to that at all, Rob, quick before we move on?
Yeah, I'll speak to the fact that I pay little to no attention to ticket percentage, money percentage. I never really know where those numbers are even generated from, honestly. I don't know. I've never sat down, and maybe I should sit down with Rick Alec or somebody heavily involved in odds logic and just say, how do they generate? Is that one casino? Is that 10 different outlets? Where exactly are those numbers coming from? And who are the people that were gauging these sort of percentages from? I don't know the answers to that. Therefore, I don't pay a lot of attention. I know people do pay attention. I'm not a guy, Adam, that falls for this stuff quite often. You hear the term, oh, that line is fishy. I'm not generally somebody who falls for that type of stuff. I think numbers are made, and odds makers may shade stuff, opinionated stuff, half a point here, half a point there to see if they can attract attention on the other side because they know where the money's going to come from when it comes to the counter. So a lot of that stuff, honestly, I don't give a lot of credence to. Some guys do, some bettors do, and I wouldn't argue with them. I would just say it's not something that interests me in any way, shape, or form, or sways my handicap in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, well, listen, Max says he swears by it, uses it. Listen, hey, I mean, you got to have an odd screen. Let's put it that way. You have to have a screen that you can look at and functions in real time. I just like the how you're able to manipulate the layout. And as I used it more and sort of figured out the functionality more, I'm pretty comfortable with the layout I have. And it's really good. And I don't mind taking a couple minutes to talk about that because this is a betting show and it's also giving picks is one thing, but it's also about kind of talking about just betting the games sometimes. And,
You know,
you know,
really quick, Adam, for those who don't have it, I think both of us could vouch it's the best in the business out there. And you can get a 7-day free trial if you want to see what Max is talking about. Just go to
yeah.
wagertalk.com, get a 7-day free trial, and you can see why Adam and I are both, locked into odds logic each and every day here.
Yeah. And while you're over there, check out the Double the CBB Firepower package that Rob and I have up on our page, 3 days or the rest of the tournament. And of course, for one more time, Rob, for the people in the back, it's $5 Tuesday. What that means, great time to just test out a handicap, or myself, Rob, anyone else on the site will have plays up for $5. And I gave you one. I guess I'm only going to have one play up for $5, Rob, because I just gave the other one on the show. Although I have a feeling I'm going to have a couple today, in addition to the two I already have up. So, stay tuned. I feel pretty good about some of the plays on this board. Okay. I'm going to head back to the chat because I think this one's very interesting. And like 4 people have asked, have posted about this game. First Flick says Mercyhurst plus 6.5. He's loving that. Shane says he played Mercyhurst. Rob, everyone wants to get involved in the Mercyhurst LIU game that is really, it's not for a tournament bid because Long Island University is already going to the NCAA tournament. The reason Mercyhurst is still in the transition period, so even if they win this game, they can't go to the NCAA tournament. I don't disagree with the Mercyhurst look from a handicapping standpoint. I think they're going to want to come out and this is their season. This is their championship game. There's no additional game after this for Mercyhurst, and winning the NEC would be a massive accomplishment. Rob, kind of reminds me of our conversation ahead of New Haven's season finale, right? New Haven, they knew they weren't going to be able to come to this tournament because they're in their first year. They had one final game against Lemoyne, and they went out with a bang, gave a great effort, and won that game. So I get why you would like Mercyhurst from a spot standpoint. They've played LIU extremely tough this year so far. They won one of those games, one of the only teams to beat LIU in the NEC this year. The problem here is, Rob, I think the odds makers are taxing the crap out of you with this number. My power rating has LIU much higher. I make LIU at home in this game. Like if this were a regular season game, and I wasn't putting that spot into it at all, I'd have LIU minus 9.8 here. That's quite a ways off of what the number is. So my question to you is, do you think the books, this is, I guess, a good segue, right? Do you think the books have shaded this a little bit to discourage people from betting LIU because they think they can do that because now it's well known that LIU doesn't need to win this game to go to the NCAA tournament?
Without question, I think that they do appreciate that number. They, again, there's always an anticipation when you're a bookmaker, anticipate where the money is going to come from and how can you limit the flood of one-sided money that you might get. So, the way to do that is to shade it right off the bat, build it into the line, and try and discourage some of the bettors. I don't know, Adam, that there's some instances where I would say, I don't know that you could shade it high enough because if Long Island is disinterested, then Long Island's disinterested. Mercyhurst, we know, is going to be interested. I mean, this is their NCAA tournament right here tonight. So they're going to come to the game ready to play. You don't know about the other side. There's instances where you couldn't, you can't make it high enough. They could win by double digits if Long Island doesn't want to play. But I don't think that that's the case, quite honestly. I think LIU is going to want to win here just as well, regardless of what Mercyhurst's circumstances are. Those don't affect Long Island at all. They don't really care what your circumstance is. We're worried about our circumstance. So for me, if it is, for folks who make numbers, make their own power ratings, if this thing seems light to you, because expectation of Mercyhurst money and a lot of people realizing that Mercyhurst has, can't go to the tournament and they're going to play harder. If you think the line favors Long Island, I would certainly go ahead and play it. I mean, I don't see, again, I can't make the case that Long Island is just not going to show up here. And that's honestly what you're hoping for.
Yep.
That Mercyhurst shows and LIU doesn't. And LIU's better than Mercyhurst to begin with. They're the best team in this conference. So for me, I'd probably look that way. Didn't play the game yet, but I don't know that I'd be in that line running to get to Mercyhurst plus points here.
I want to make a quick point about this game because it's reminiscent to me of the conversation we had on Sunday with Kelly prior to the High Point Winthrop game, where this might actually be a pretty good live betting opportunity. So the thing I'd be looking for here with LIU is the status of Jamal Fuller. He had I think he rolled an ankle in the Chicago State game. I know there was some people that were unsure if he would play on Saturday. I fully expected him to play. The Wagner got bet in that game as if he wasn't going to play. But of course, Jamal Fuller, not only was he out there, Rob, but he played all 40 minutes of the game. Went for 17 and 10. So I guess my only concern with the LIU side would be if anyone has an ailment, do they play limited minutes or do they not play much? Because of course, LIU already has the tournament bid, and you can't afford to go into next week not fully healthy. That being said, I don't think Rod Strickland is trying to deprive anyone of playing in this game. And then just to the last final point I'll make in favor of LIU, this will be one of the biggest home games they've had in recent memory. They're going to have probably a close to a sellout for this game. Like, it'll be their best crowd of the year. I just don't know how you get in that atmosphere if you're LIU and you're not like totally fired up to go out and win and play a great game. And if that's the case, then boy, is that 6.5 number cheap. Again, I pulled up my number here. I make it 9.9. So I really do think the books are forcing you to pay a big time tax to back Mercyhurst, who will 100% have a chance in this game because that's a pretty good basketball team. So probably nothing for me there. I just thought that was a fascinating discussion. And, it looks like we have people on both sides of that one. So do what you will with it. But again, I saw a lot of people talking about that game, and that is another conference championship game. So we got to talk about it on the show. All right, Rob, let's do this. Do you know what you want to put in the parlay? And then maybe with the last few minutes, we can find a one we both agree on. But I'll give you the floor if you want to give out a game right here.
Yeah, you know what? I struggle with which one to leave here for the group, but I'm going to go. This is some handicap to it, a lot of gut feel. I had mentioned a couple of weeks back, Adam, that I thought Portland State was a fatigued basketball team because their offense just didn't do enough to help the defense out, and their defense has been superb all conference season. They got a little bit of rest. They bounced back with a big win. They got a little rest here. The way the Big Sky tournament works out, they got the rest. Montana didn't. Portland State's got double revenge here tonight against Montana, and all the accolades that I've thrown, the way of Money Williams, the way of Montana and their defense of this conference championship tournament. They're the winner last year. I think that all comes to an end here tonight. I think Portland State rested is probably, and again, out-seeking double revenge is probably the right way to go here. For me, Portland State has been the better of the two this season. Montana's been very up and down. Just the Northern Colorado results will show you how up and down Montana's been. The consistency hasn't been there this year for them. Love the rise up out of them last night, the 40-point performance. I mean, obviously, Williams is a guy with a bullseye on his chest. You have to cut the head off the stake, so to speak, in this instance, because without him, Montana's a different team offensively. I think Portland State can do that. Again, for me, Portland State rested is a lot better than what they were staggering down the stretch unrested. I think the end of the conference season, the tail end got to them physically. It showed up in their results. And one more time, when they finally got a little breather heading into this tournament, they came out and played really well, like they had played all season long. Remember, this is the number one seed in the tournament still. They were the best team in this league all year long. So I thought the price here, a little bit light. You have to win by 3. Again, the double revenge factor kicks in here. So for me, my leg of the parlay, and Big Sky's been pretty good to me all season long. So I'll stick in that conference. Portland State minus 2.5. Second leg of the parlay here.
All right. Yeah, I mean, listen, I this is one where I'd probably be on the other side. I'm just again, but it's weird in these conference tournaments, Rob. And I think I'm gonna just sort of finish up this discussion with, because this is like conference tournament 101 like mentality where like I won with Montana last night. And I am somewhat premeditated coming into this tournament saying that was the team I was going to target. Like, I think Montana going into the tournament was like the team I wanted to target to potentially make a run. Right. So it's like, I always struggle with this. So I think it's like great to address on this show, because this is going to happen a number of times this week where you cash with a team and then you have to sort of like fight yourself. It's like, am I just going to ride this team until they lose, right? Like, because I'm going in premeditated saying like, well, I think Montana's going to win this tournament. So am I going to ride them till they lose, or do I want to, like, when do you get off the ride, Rob, right? If you stayed on the ride with Georgia Southern and just kept running it back,
yeah,
you did pretty good for yourself. So that's kind of how I was looking at Montana, but I don't disagree with some of the things you pointed out with Portland State. And yeah, I mean, listen, the old adage, it's tough to beat a team 3 times. It certainly is. I love Bayou's note right here, and I guess we can leave it on this. And another thing to look for in play, Money Williams went to the line 18 times last night. They called everything around the hole. That would be Portland State's undoing in this game. If they get into foul trouble, because they do foul, we've talked about this on this show a lot, where they play, they have 4 guys that they really play, and then like 5 and 6 play like, limited minutes. And then after that, it's like, okay, now who's up 7th, who's up 8th. They are not a deep team. Those 4, their top 4 players play the vast majority of the minutes. So yeah, that could be what swings that game one way or another, is how that whistle's going. And if Portland State, if Montana's getting to the line and Portland State's racking up the fouls, I think that really helps Montana in this game. So that's going to be an interesting one right there.
Yeah, and the 19 free throws, I would just point out, sometimes those have to be kind of categorized. Northern Colorado was in a chase situation where they fouled relentlessly at the end of that game, lose by 6, but it was one of those, what we always call it, game extension, right? A lot of your free throws are coming during game extension, not necessarily because refs are calling ticky-tack stuff. And then the other thing I would say to that is, the referees who refereed Montana last night, do they come back and referee Montana again tonight? Not so sure that's the way that works. Same exact referee crew. So Money Williams did his job. They put the ball in his hands. That's what they're supposed to do if you're this team. I will say that from my perspective, when you play Northern Colorado, who plays, they and Portland State are in 2 different hemispheres as far as defensive capability are concerned. You come back now, you're going to play a grinder rather than a team where you found your way easily against and you had revenge against. A lot of that goes into the handicap here. Good game. It's lined at 2.5 for a reason, because you can make counter arguments here like Bayou, Adam, and myself about this game. So, again, I think Portland State's probably the right side here. I would pretty much assume that there's going to be a descent in Montana's offensive output here tonight.
All right, Rob, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take the last couple minutes to make my case for my Siena Saints, who are playing in the MAC championship game tonight down at Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. And then right at the end, we will decide. We'll just take something that we've already talked about, whether it be this game or maybe we go back to Gonzaga and close out the 3-team parlay. I think Siena gets it done tonight. That's my gut says Siena gets it done, and here's why. They played. So they've now lost to Merrimack twice, but they made big time improvements in the second game against the Merrimack zone. If Brendan Coyle, who goes 2 for 10 in that game from 3, has a better shooting night, he actually had the look that would have won it in regulation. Siena wins that game. They actually probably deserve to win that second game that they lost in OT. Their defense has really stepped up of late. Like Siena's playing the best defense they've played all year, the last, 2 to 3 weeks. And to me, like they've figured out the zone enough where I just sort of think if they can lock in on the defensive end and Gavin Doty can make enough plays, because that's ultimately what Merrimack does really well. And what the reason they were able to win both of those regular season meetings is their zone is the Joe Gallo zone forces Siena to shoot. Siena is not a great shooting team. But then the other thing is it's made it difficult for Doty to get to the rim. But now that he's had 80 minutes against this zone, Rob, I feel like he started to find his way into some of the crevices in the last game. And I think you get a better showing from Siena offensively than you got in the first two meetings. I actually think they could hold Merrimack under 60. So I like the Saints here. Haven't bet it yet. I saw Merrimack take some money. I'm tempted. But Rob, what about an under? That Boardwalk Hall is because it's Arch Madness 2.0. There was 2 more on Sunday night when I was there. They're now 7-2 for the tournament. So do you have anything side or total Siena Merrimack?
Well, the problem with the total is that the vultures have already gotten to it, right? And there's nothing left for me and you to go get. 130.5 down to 124.5. So if you're early to that party, obviously the way Adam laid that game out, you would be attracted to under 130.5. 124.5. I like to say this all the time. Teams can get to that number in modern day college basketball by mistake. You're talking about a 63-62 final if it's a 1-point game. 63-62 is never undoable, no matter who's on the floor in college hoop. I didn't like the way Merrimack closed that game against Marist. Adam, I think you made the point really quick here on Sunday when we talked with Kelly about unless Marist miraculously finds some jump shooters, they got no chance in this game. And for the majority of that game, Merrimack kept their distance. The margin was there, right, to cover that number. And then all of a sudden, Merrimack goes cold. Marist makes a couple hoops. And what do you know? You're in a 1-point final. That's the problem with that side, is that you just can't trust. Joe Gallo's own defense is great and all of that, but you can't trust that offense at times. You're not trusting them to do much. Only win by 4 here. That's not a lot. But in these conference championship games, we see how they come to the wires. So I should have worn like my Hunter Green polo today. I wasn't even thinking. I should have. That's a show of disrespect on my part here today. I should have been better than that.
All right, Rob, here's what we're going to do. So games, we're going to close this parlay out right now.
Okay.
Games we've talked about that I feel like we agree on. Siena, Gonzaga, maybe Wright State. I'll throw those 3 out there. Siena, Gonzaga, Wright State. Which of those do you like the best? We'll close it out with one of those 3. And you can throw a team total. It doesn't necessarily have to be a side. Which of those do you like the best?
I'm thoroughly open to Gonzaga team total over the 82.5. I'm thoroughly open to the Wright State team total, but I think the Gonzaga we agreed on pretty well.
Yeah, I was going to say, the only question now is, do you want to put the Gonzaga side or the team total? I think the side maybe moved a little bit. So do we go team total? Yeah.
It did move up to 7.5 now, full point move. So I think we probably stick to, in my mind, the over 82.5 seems doable. I think they get to 85. I think you said that earlier. They'll probably get to 85. And so.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and just the final point as we sign off, right? They should be able to get to the rim and almost name how much they should be able to score as many as they want to score. For Santa Clara, it's going to be, can you score with them, in my opinion, because I just don't think Santa Clara is stringing together stop after stop against that front court. So I'm good with that. Gonzaga team total to close it out. But I do need you rooting for my Saints. We need all the need all the helps we can get. Some Siena alum paid for all the buses for the kids. So they were going to charge the kids $20 to drive them down there. Now it's just anyone that wants to go, free ticket, free bus, paid for by some anonymous Siena donor. So I think they've got upwards of there was already 100 sign up and people were still signing up. So They should have a nice, some nice fan support down there in AC tonight. And like I said, I need you cheering for them. They're not in the parlay, but the parlay is Gonzaga, team total over 82.5. Rob and I agree on that one. Rob's going to go with Portland State -2.5. And I'm going to go with Baylor -3.5. I've attached -125 juice to that one. You can play -4 as well. That's fine. That is the early tip. So that's noon. That's 12:30 Eastern. So we're going 3-teamer today. If you get in late, just play the 2-teamer. That's why I wanted to add that third leg in case you got in late. That's the show today. We will be back. I promise I will be on a little bit more sleep than I was on today, tomorrow, since I won't be up till all hours at the ER. But I also decided I'm leaving my ER bracelet on until I lose one, because I feel like that also helped me get Santa Clara home. So, yeah, everyone have a great day. We got hoops all day for the rest of the week, and you'll have Rob and I believe, like literally every day this month. So we'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern. Cash all your tickets today, and we will see you guys in the morning.